I'm glad he's
order the City of Sherwood's Budget Committee meeting for May 21st. May 21st? How about May 28th, 2020? David, would you please call roll?
Yes, I will. Mayor Mays?
here.
Council President Rosner?
Here.
Councilor Browse?
Here.
Councilor Garland?
Here.
Councilor Griffin?
Here.
Councilor Scott?
I am here.
Councilor Young?
Here.
Chair Taylor?
Present.
Brian Fairbanks?
Here.
Matt Kaufman?
Here.
Paul Mayer?
Here.
Lena Painter?
Here.
Thomas Sherwood?
Here.
Katie Strode?
Here.
Okay. And then before I turn it over, in regards to the public comment, just full disclosure, one of the 3 letters that was submitted for a comment on the budget, on the city's budget, was from my wife. Just full disclosure, that was her opinion. And, you know, as a Sherwood resident, she felt she wanted to make a comment on that. So I just wanted full disclosure, and Josh is going to read those 3 letters just to kind of make sure, you know, I just want to remain independent, but, you know, those are my wife's opinions. So, Josh, I'll turn it over to you because we've had, like I said, three letters submitted for public comment.
Thanks, David. Okay, I'll go ahead and read the comments into the record here. I did time myself reading them in advance, and I think I can get them all done in about 4 minutes each. But please bear with me.
Can everyone mute their mic, please? And then the feedback should go away.
Is anyone getting feedback now? Okay, looks like we're...
Josh, you can't be muted.
He's at home. Maybe we lost him.
I apologize. Did I drop out for a second there? I'll start over. Apologies. Sherwood Budget Committee, we respectfully ask your consideration of the following as it pertains to the current budget proposal for the City of Sherwood and the elimination of the PERS pickup. It is no surprise to us that this is a contentious issue, and with that in mind, we approach the Budget Committee with great concern. As committed long-term employees and experienced leaders within the City of Sherwood, we can understand the city's desire to separate from the volatility of PERS rates and fluctuations. We can accept the sunsetting of the PERS pickup benefit may stabilize the city financially. That said, we respectfully ask that you consider alternatives to the process proposed in eliminating this benefit from our compensation. Please consider that because PERS requires this contribution, each employee family impacted by this policy change will be forced to contribute 6% of their paycheck to the fund, thus reducing money we all have budgeted and had been offered as part of our benefit package when we were hired. Although it has been discussed as a city goal, the actual implementation this July is a heavy burden and surprise during a pandemic and the looming economic effects to employee families. This direct impact is felt deeply among families who are already struggling through this current crisis. This deep cut to our compensation package is significant enough to harm employees' families for years to come, especially when many families are experiencing huge financial burdens during this crisis. We wish to present you with possible solutions that may allow the city to distance from the volatility of PERS, but which can do so in a manner that softens the tremendous impact this policy change will have on employee families, on retention of employees, and on future hiring of qualified employees. The City of Sherwood is currently in a unique position in which it can truly sundown and soften the felt financial blow that the individual employees and their families will experience while still accomplishing the city's goal of separating from PERS. The City of Sherwood currently has a significant budget surplus and anticipates that surplus to continue through the next few years. By implementing a short-term step-down financial fringe benefit to non-represented employees, the City of Sherwood could control the felt burden of employees and allow an adjustment over the next 2 to 3 years while reaching the same goals the city has expressed. We respectfully request that the city consider offering employees affected by this policy change beginning July 1, 2020, a COLA increase plus a one-time 1-year 5% fringe benefit spread over the year. Then, if budget permits, in July 1, 2021, a COLA increase plus a one-time 1-year 3% fringe benefit spread over the 2021 year. This will allow the city to truly sundown the PERS pickup and will allow the felt financial impact to be spread across 2 years while not dipping below the general fund requirements. The effect on employees and their families will still be felt. However, this allows the city to accomplish goals while caring for its employees and sends a message that the city will support employees through the unknown short-term effects of this pandemic and the economic impacts we are experiencing. Although this proposal may not show the exact numerical necessities for the budget, we believe an alternative such as this allows the city to implement the goal of eliminating the PERS pickup while supplementing the employees in a very short-term way in which the city can control and maintains employees' total compensation for the budget year. Please consider an alternative to the proposed budget, as passing this budget as it is will devastate many of the families who diligently serve you as citizens of the Sherwood community. We have other suggestions in addressing the PERS issue and have given a synopsis of one possible solution. We would be happy to work with the Budget Committee collaboratively to find a reasonable solution that meets all parties' needs and objectives. Attached is Exhibit A. This is a graph showing our fund balance versus projected fund balance for the last 4 years. As the graph illustrates, the city has continued to exceed the projected fund balance since 2016. We are financially stable and can sustain our current expenses while working out a solution for PERS. Thank you for your consideration in this matter, the Sherwood Police Department captains and sergeants. Okay, the second letter. Please read the following citizen comment, which has been submitted 24 hours prior to the May 28, 2020 Budget Committee meeting and is intended to directly comment on the City of Sherwood's budget for the next fiscal year. As a Sherwood resident since 2006, I'm concerned that the city will adopt a budget which eliminates the employer PERS contribution of 6% for all non-represented employees without properly vetting both the appearance of such an undertaking and the blatant disregard for the time and money spent in 2018 to correct the city's management salary schedules just 2 years ago. In order to be brief and concise, I offer the following questions for your consideration. 1, is the deliberate intention of the Budget Committee to remove the 6% employer-paid PERS contribution for only a select group of employees? 2, how many non-represented employees does the City of Sherwood employ? 3, what is the percentage of non-rep employees to total city employees? 4, does the Budget Committee think targeting such a small group non-rep is acceptable and fair? 5, if removing the employer-paid contribution is advisable, why isn't the Budget Committee waiting to make this a fair and balanced organizational change for all represented, non-represented, and contractual employees? 6, does the Budget Committee intend to remove the 6% employer-paid PERS contribution from all employees in the future, rep, non-rep, and contract? 7, has there been good faith negotiations with the employee unions on this issue to date? 8, what was the outcome of the recent collective bargaining agreements and union negotiations regarding removing the 6% employer-paid PERS contribution? 9, if the employee unions reject losing the 6% employer-paid PERS contribution in the future, will you reinstate the 6% employer-paid contribution to the non-represented employees? In 2018, a compensation study plan by the McGrath Human Resources Group was commissioned by the City of Sherwood. 2 objectives of the study were to obtain and establish compensation among the external comparable market, provide implementation strategies for any compensation systems updates, including a projection of the ongoing budget commitments necessary to provide a sustainable and consistent compensation system. At the time of the study, the data indicated that 19 positions were currently below the average market compensation rate, and 12 additional positions were very close to falling below. The McGrath Group further found that 15 of those 19 positions were in the management salary schedule. They stated, additional analysis of the management schedule is warranted. In particular, the management schedule will allow the most adjustments to keep pace with the external market. The proposed salary schedule presented later in the report has been created to address these concerns. Without maintaining the schedule, salaries will fall behind the market and the city will be in a position of expending dollars to keep up. Following the executive report, the total compensation for positions below the market rate appear to have been adjusted according to the recommendations of the McGrath Group. I'm concerned the city is now flip-flopping its position on providing competitive market compensation for top talent, and that the money spent by Sherwood property taxpayers, which most likely funded this study, will have now been wasted. Please consider these questions. 1, if the 6% employer-paid contribution is removed for non-rep positions, will their salaries be adjusted accordingly to maintain the progress achieved with the compensation study plan? 2, will the Budget Committee authorize another salary study to determine if removing the 6% employer-paid contribution will again lower the non-rep salaries to below market rate prior to voting to remove the employer contribution? Thank you for taking the time to read this. I hope these important questions will be considered. This will be voted away. And now our final citizen comment. Dear City Council, Mayor, and Budget Committee members, this letter is meant to accompany and support the recent letters from Public Works Management and discussion at the May 21, 2020 Budget Committee meeting in regards to the proposed elimination of the city-provided PERS employee contribution for exempt staff. Many of you may recall a similar letter entered into the record at last year's budget meeting. As library management staff and professional librarians representing 21 employees for the City of Sherwood, we are proud to provide library services for the City of Sherwood and surrounding area as a founding member library of Oregon County Cooperative Library Services. Our library is well respected in the Oregon library community and in Washington County for providing excellent service and having a knowledgeable and enthusiastic staff with high morale. Average longevity of library staff is approximately 6 years. On the library management team, made up of the library operations supervisor and library manager, we have a combined 26 years of longevity at the City of Sherwood and 52 years of library experience. Total combined longevity for all library staff is over 120 years. Staff are drawn to apply and stay for a reason, as is true of many other city departments as well. With the above in mind, we present to you reasons to reconsider the proposal to require exempt staff to pay the employee 6% PERS contribution. As was stated in the Budget Committee meeting last year, the City of Sherwood is not unique in the 6% PERS contribution paid by the employer. It is part of the overall compensation plan for city employees and helps to keep us competitive in the local market. To maintain a qualified staff, need to be competitive within the library job market for all of the metro area. Consider that the recent compensation study and wage increases to bring wages to market value would be undermined by this proposed change. As you know, Sherwood is one of the most expensive places to live in the area, and living and working in the same city or even in the area may no longer be an option for staff facing this reduction. If approved, impacts on our family's income will range from approximately $450 to $900 per month of reduced income during a time when economic stability from local government helps economic recovery for our community. The city's budget has an ending fund balance of 38% this fiscal year and projected 34% fiscal year 2021. Given no other cuts have been suggested to the budget and new positions are being added, the city does not appear to be in a financial crisis. Further, consider that staff were given an analysis by the finance director comparing the last 4 years' projected ending fund balances and actual ending fund balances. Every year has seen larger ending fund balances than projected, a difference of $177,093 fiscal year 1920 and $792,971 fiscal year 1819. This proposal targets a very specific group of employees who do not have a voice through a bargaining unit. Consider that recent changes made through the council-run PO subcommittee process created equity with benefits for non-director exempt staff to be in line with the rest of city staff. This is a long process that brought to light concerns of communication and transparency. The proposed change to PERS contributions creates another instance of inequity in benefits during a time when staff have less opportunity to provide meaningful feedback. The city's livability has much to do with the quality of services available to the community. Staff who coordinate and oversee those services are valuable for the long-term success of the city and not easily replaced. We invite you to consider the other options presented by Public Works staff to solve the PERS funding concerns, including postponing the implementation and allowing the state time to develop reform to PERS. Sincerely, Adrian Domingue Calkins, Library Manager, 6 years of service, 28 years of library experience. Jenny Swanson, Library Operations Supervisor, 20 years of service, 24 years of library experience. That concludes the citizen comments that were received.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Is it appropriate to talk about these now? Joe? Joe Gall? I can see you, Joe. Anyway,
Just a
we'll
minute.
wait for Joe to jump in. Okay.
Oh, come on. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you
Sorry.
now.
It was not unmuting for some reason. So I think you have a lot of information to go through, and you can talk about these when you get to deliberations. That would be my
Okay.
recommendation, since it's entirely up to the committee, but you normally don't talk about letters that are submitted or public testimony at this point.
Okay, fine. Then we're going to move on to is the next thing the public hearing on the state shared revenue, and I'm going to turn it over to David to present.
All right, now you guys can hear me. So the reason why we are here tonight conducting a public hearing on state shared revenue, because in order for a city to be included in the apportionments or receive distributions under this section for a fiscal year, they're required to hold one public hearing during budget deliberations and one budget hearing during kind of the adopting process, which will be held on, I believe it's June 16th, Tuesday. So if you were to turn to page 9, this was in the supplemental packet that I sent out to you folks. I'll give you a second to turn to page 9. And basically, these are estimates that are provided by the League of Oregon Cities. They send out a nice little packet and they conduct analysis on, you know, because the state will tell you what they feel they're going to give you per individual or per capita, while the League of Oregon Cities and in past history of the city, they talk about you might want to budget a little bit under those amounts, because I did actually look in the last 4 years, and we have never came in, never collected what the state has said that they're going to give us. And so these are all estimates. One thing I would like to point out, we do not receive 911 tax revenues, and we do not receive marijuana tax revenue. I know there's been some talk about, whether by citizens talking about the marijuana ban. And just to give folks on the budget committee kind of a dollar figure per capita amount for next year, you'd be looking at roughly about $69,000 in lost revenue here in the city of Sherwood. And that's just from the state alone. That's not to say that the city, if they were to allow this, would also include some kind of ordinance with an additional tax. So if you flip to page 10, I want to kind of talk a little bit about the makeup of the revenues of the general fund. Of course, property taxes are the biggest revenue source for the general fund, followed by fines, interest, and other. But intergovernmental revenues is where this state shared revenue is kind of intermixed. And if you were to flip to page 11, it shows the little amount that the general fund does receive. Calculated, we factor in and budget an estimate for cigarette tax of a little over $22,000, state revenue sharing a little over $232,000, with liquor tax coming in about $346,000. But the larger portion is actually shared with the street operations fund. And if you were to flip to page 12, it gives a little bit of a breakdown. The apportionment of vehicle taxes is about $1.6 million budgeted for next fiscal year, with the gas tax allocation coming in around $71,000. Now, there are restrictions with the street operations. Those dollars can only be used for expenses related to streets such as paving, streetscape maintenance, street trees, the sealing, the crack seal, equipment, personnel. While the general fund, those are combined with all other non-restricted funds, and basically they help support general operations, which can include public safety, administration, community services, facilities. So it's just kind of intermixed in the general fund and helps to support all those departments in the general fund. And so with that, normally if we were all meeting in person, I would turn this over for public comment. I received no email to date, and within that 24-hour time frame, wanting any kind of letter or any kind of information read on any citizen comments. And just for the citizens out there, you'll have one more chance, public testimony, come that June meeting, if you feel like you want to let council know how you think the money should be spent. And kind of with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions that the committee might have of me, just on the state shared revenues.
I would just like to clear up this is Councilor Young, one thing. I think you said on the marijuana tax that we could have an ordinance for more tax. I just want to clear up for our citizens that we already have an ordinance for a 3% tax, so.
Okay, it's the recreational marijuana that's banned, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
David, this is Tim. We have a long session coming up in Salem, and the governor's forecasting, or various forecasts out there, but they're looking at a $10 billion hole over the next, I think, 5 years. Are you hearing anything from the state in terms of, what kind of potential risk we have to lose some portion of some of those shared revenues?
Yeah, in terms of the various pots of state shared revenue, when you're looking at it's a little interesting to hear with folks during this COVID time, staying at home. Liquor sales are up significantly, marijuana sales are up significantly. But the one thing in the street operations fund, we really took a hit that last quarter. I would say from April to the end of June. What I projected is about a 40% decline on where we would have came in, just for that one quarter. And when Craig gets to the street operations, I can kind of talk about that line item. But according to ODOT, that there's been a lot of talk about in the month of June that folks are going to be getting back on the road, we're going to start seeing that gas revenue tax bounce back. So I haven't heard a lot of talk of what is going to be the financial impact. And I know Joe last week in his budget message, this is going to kind of be a little bit of a moving target where we're going to have to be constantly analyzing as more information comes out, maybe updating projections, and kind of depending on how the fall ends up. I know in the fall, just in case, hopefully there's not another outbreak where we're quarantined, I did factor in a little bit of a decline for another quarter during the fall time. So, if for some reason that doesn't happen, then, during the supplemental budget process, come next fiscal year, we might be boosting up some of that revenue.
Thank you.
Any other
Okay,
questions?
any more discussion by the committee? Okay, then there aren't any more comments, so I'm going to close the public hearing on the use of the state revenue sharing, knowing that we can talk about it at our next meeting. Any other discussion? No. Okay. Let's move on to new business. And Julia Hyduke, I think you have it.
Good evening, Budget Committee. So I and Craig Sheldon sort of tag team with the capital improvement plan and the capital fund projects. I'm looking at page 40 of your budget document, basically through page 45 of your budget document. On page 40, it's begins the 5-year capital improvement program. So our full CIP is every project that is in any of our master plans, as well as anything that kind of has come up in the course of council goals, things like that. The 5-year CIP is sort of getting things lined up to start getting funded. Really what the budget committee is truly adopting is the 1-year CIP, which is essentially the 2021 column in that document. That's giving us the budget authority to spend money on these capital improvements. Many of the projects that you see on page 40 are new to the CIP this year. They are street improvement projects related to Public Works's Pavement Index program, and so there's a lot of things that are new this year. Rather than going through all of them, if you look at page 42 through 45, there's a description of what each of these projects are, or at least the 1-year CIP funded projects, what those are. I or Craig can answer any questions you might have on the proposed 1-year CIP projects.
Julia,
Yes.
where do we stand on last year's projects? Are they all completed, or are they some of them still pending?
So some of them are still moving forward, and they're reflected in this CIP, some things that are carrying over. Many of them are completed. There are a few that are sort of straddling. We thought they were going to be done this fiscal year and are probably going to spill over a little bit into next fiscal year. So we'll probably need to come back and do a supplemental budget in a month or two after the end of the fiscal year, and we kind of see exactly where we're at and where we're at from a money spent this fiscal year versus next fiscal year. But for the most part, the projects are done. Most of them are, the ones that aren't are things like the Sunset Boulevard, Kruger Elwert, Oregon Street. We began design this year. That's going to be a multi-year project.
Right, and we're not necessarily building it
Right.
in 2 years.
But but we've
Just
started it this year, and then there's
pursue other people's money.
yes. And then sewer, the Rock Creek sewer project is starting this fiscal year. Well, hopefully starting this fiscal year, and will continue on. And then there's some Brookman projects that the Brookman Sanitary Sewer Project that's started. Clean Water Services is leading that, and we're contributing to that. And then same, there's some water projects that it spans multiple years, but we know that going into it. And then the Cedar Creek Trail project is nearing the end, but it will not be done before the end of this fiscal year, but it will be done before the end of next fiscal year. Mark my words. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for me or Craig?
I'd love to alter the document to change the Blake Street name and just call it like the Tonkin Employment Area Road to be named later. Minor technicality, but I hate seeing it on documents.
Yeah, and I know that, and I'm sorry. I should have caught that. So just for history for everybody, when we did the Tonkin Employment Area Concept Plan, that was referred to as the East-West Collector. And then as we coordinated with Tualatin on sort of those plans, it was envisioned to line up with Blake Street and Tualatin. And so it sort of became the Blake Street connection. It's not really the case anymore that it's even lining up with Blake Street and Tualatin anymore. And Mayor Mays has pointed out a number of times that it really hasn't been formally named. Because we have applied for grants recently, it sort of still has that Blake Street connection, and we try to refer to it as the Tonkin Employment Area East-West Collector. We could certainly include that, and then maybe in parentheses, currently referred to as Blake Street, or nope. Oh.
Thank you.
We will do whatever. Yes, we can change that. I just
TEA Road.
Sure.
Yep, and going from this budget document to the next budget document, I'll work with Julia. We'll get that name changed because there's a great catch that Councilor Griffin had on page 38 that I'm going to be making a little minor tweak to. So we'll get that updated for you, Mayor.
Thanks.
Okay.
The rest looks good.
Okay, moving on to Public Works Utilities. Craig?
Good evening. Really, so we'll start with the streets. It's page 81A, line item. Budget. Really, I just want to call your attention to what David was talking about in the revenue. You'll see a big difference from 1.2 to 1.562. David, can you explain that? Versus the 358 down below.
Yeah, give me 1 second to get flipped to that page because I was marking something up on the CIP list there.
No problem.
Craig, which two line items are you talking about?
So if you go up in the top in the revenue under intergovernmental agreement, you'll see the appropriate vehicle tax, which David had talked to you about on his shared revenue from the state, as well as the vehicle registration. There was a little bit of a mistake last year in how some of that stuff was accounted for.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, if you were to just look at this, you see that we, for the apportionment or account number 4211 for the vehicle taxes, you could see where we adopted a budget of $1.1 million and we're projecting a $1.2 million. We're under COVID, you might be thinking, well, there's about a 40% loss you should be factoring in there. Well, in actuality, the League of Oregon Cities last year, when they came out with that report, they projected about $1.553 million, and that is that $1.1 million plus that $300,000. And just for some reason, there might have been a typo, that state money was split between the state line item of 4211 and the vehicle registration taxes of 4218. Those are two totally separate pots of money. One comes from the county, one comes from the state. So that's why the projections are still coming in pretty decent. We're still projecting higher than what we budgeted, but that's been corrected in the proposed fiscal year 2021. You'll see the complete correction of kind of how things should have looked a little bit with, of course, some moderate increases. So any questions on that?
I think Katie might have combined those last year, might have been some of the issue, and that's what the big difference is, like he said. So really the street, but thank you, David. Really, the street budget will maintain the same level of service we provided this last year to the community. I want to call 6198. There is an increase. That's where we do our road rating. So when we were talking about our pavement management, PCI, our pavement index, which is how we determine what roads need to be repaired, if it's a grind, overlay, crack seal, or a slurry seal, we do that every 3 years. So there'll be some money put towards re-rating. We're about 84 or so, so we'll see where we're at after the re-rating. That's where we were this last year. On the next page, 81B, pretty much everything is the same. Yeah.
Yeah. A quick question, and
yeah.
If you covered this, I apologize. On your revenue side for intergovernmental revenue for the vehicle taxes and the gas tax allocation, are we factoring in potential hits to that at this point?
On line item 4211, 4218, yes, we are factoring in some hits on that.
So even with the hit.
What's that?
So even with the hits, we're
more money than this, and I backed that down from their projections, and just to factor in for a quarter, more like about a 20% decrease. Just, we're a little more experienced. If we were to go in some kind of lockdown with COVID again in the fall, it's not going to be something that's going to be all brand new to citizens and residents here in the state of Oregon. We'll be a little more familiar, and I don't think it'll be quite as, I don't want to say dramatic, but folks are just be used to it. But yes, we have factored in. And this is where it just looks odd, and that's just because things were, there was an error made in the way things were adopted last year, and everything's getting corrected. But yes, Tim, we are factoring in some kind of loss. I'm hoping not a loss, but factoring in some kind of loss in those two revenue sections. But then you also have to remember too that, for example, in vehicle registration taxes, I'm one of those individuals. I can't go to the DMV to get my registration right now, and so there's going to be a little bit of an influx of revenue, of that lost revenue we're losing this current fiscal year. People are still going to have to go register their cars at some point, and that could come in all next fiscal year. So I kind of factored in a little bit of that too, of carryover proceeds.
Yeah, I kind of figured that one would work its way out. It was the gas tax and the vehicle taxes I was more concerned about.
Yeah. And all these little pots of money that are really reliant on, the state and, the pandemic out there, everything we're going to watch very closely. Luckily, this fund still has a pretty healthy fund balance, even projected at the end of next fiscal year, where if it took a little bit of a loss or a little bit of a hit, it wouldn't be too significant to the fund.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And then one last thing, I'll call your attention to 7010 under capital outlay. You'll see 461,000. That ties back to the capital projects for maintenance of streets. So somebody asked a question if all the projects were done. The street projects, most of them are all done. There's a couple culvert projects or a couple drainage projects we're doing that are going to finish up very close to the end of this budget year, maybe the first week or two in July, depending on schedule. So, but that's where you'll see that. Also out of the street budget, and Joe's message was $100K for traffic calming, putting money that's coming from the street operation budget itself. So that's where that funding is coming from. So any questions on the street budget? Excellent. We'll move to water. And I believe that is page 86A. So one thing I do want to mention here, the revenue stuff, The rate increase and stuff that David's talked about is in the fee schedule that you'll see. We've got a financial analyst come in and do went through our system, as well as we don't have our resiliency projects in there, but we will have them in there this next year because we were finishing up the project. We'll bring her back in to do a rate study. The last recommendation was 2% a year. So I believe David has put that into the fee schedule. I also want to call out line item 6310. You can see where it starts at 1.7. That really depends on the amount of water the citizens use and we pay Wilsonville for. That number of 1370241 actually needs to be changed to 1567511.70. And I talked to David about this. We really need to be putting in our budget the $1.68 or whatever that number is. We usually get a credit back every year, but if we don't, then we don't have enough money to pay for our water. We have to come back. We had to do that a few years ago. So this is based off our current rate at the plant and what kind of season we think we're going to have. Now, we could have a really hot summer and that number could change closer to, it could be higher, but we're also bringing money in revenue-wise. So I just want to point that out, that we want to make sure when we adopt the budget that is in there that way. And really your water ops budget is same level of service, same water quality sampling, everything that we've done in the past will get done this next year with this budget.
Craig, have we seen any kind of year-over-year odd changes in terms of the amount of water going through our system over the last 3 months?
So I sent council an email earlier today from the COVID where we have about 63 accounts of about $31,000. We have 1.3% in shutoff mode out of 60, it's a little over 6,100 accounts. So overall, we've been very proactive. The utility billing staff's done a great job reaching out to people, trying to find them ways to get their bills paid. And here by the next month or so, after we go 3 months, we'll run a full year compared to last year and see where we're at. But right now, that's where we're at. So we can expect about $50,000 is what we're going to lose from the COVID from non-paying if it continues the same rate to this budget year.
Yeah, and I read that email. Thank you very much. That was really good information. I was more referring just to the gallons going through our system. You know, the millions of gallons a day. Are we seeing people are using less water? Or is it pretty much seasonally the same?
It's probably pretty close to seasonally the same up until about March, April. Now with the warmer weather, this is when every year it can really decide what you're selling and what you're bringing in from April, May, and June, depending if we have a hot spring or a wet spring. So right now it's been pretty dry, so sales should be going up. But those bills are all out right now. So next month we'll be able to run those and get an actual number on that.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions on the water budget? Next one is sanitary, which is page.
Greg, I have a question.
Yeah.
Are we forgiving those bills, or are we working with them for repayment later at a less amount, or what?
So we have a relief fund that we set up. They could get a one-time it's about $59 off their bill if they apply for it. I think we've denied 15 or 20 of them, I think, that's turned stuff in. We've also have a hardship as well as a low income assistant program through the Salvation Army that we send to, that we put so much money in a year, as well as these 63 accounts. What'll end up happening is once we get through the COVID, if it's the end of phase 2 or whatever, our billing staff will start working with the folks they've already communicated with on some sort of a payment plan. We try to do it within the year, but we might have to stretch it out 12 months to 18 months to be able to get the people to make the payments so we collect that money. And then it'll go so long, it'll start the process before anything goes to collection or anything like that. Does that help you out?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Sanitary's page 90. You'll see a little bit difference in the revenues. Sanitary's, this is just what the city brings in. This isn't clean water services. So this is one of our funds that we really have problems doing a bunch of projects in because we don't have a lot of money. and we do have some failing systems out there. So over the next probably 5 years, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to fund these projects. If we need to look at the commercial side of things, because we have the 2% increase on the residential side, or if we go get some kind of grant or a loan of some sort to be able to do a few of these projects. And we're doing a phasing project on Schaumburg that's in this year's budget, but it's probably close to $550,000 to $600,000, and there's no way this budget can actually fund a project like that. So a couple items here. You'll see 6011 regular salaries has gone up just because how we allocate staff. It's pretty much same level of service in this budget as we provided will meet Clean Water Services requirements and mandates. One thing you'll notice in 7010, there's 119,000. There's some money in there to start working on phase 1 of the Schaumburg sanitary line. It's designed from Division Street. It's a back property line. So there's some money set aside in there, but we can't do the full thing. We'll get the stuff done in the road is what we're hoping to, so we can pave. So that's what that project is, and that's what the 119,000 is in there for. Anybody have any questions on the sanitary budget? Not a lot's changed, so I'm kind of just going through it, but just feel free to ask anything you need. I'll get it answered for you. Next budget is storm water. It's page 94A. You'll see in the revenue side of 1.654, that's our billing. There's $400,000 that we also bring in from the storm fund that gets transferred over to the storm capital fund for the projects that are related to rates. So that's more like close to 2 million versus the 1.6 altogether that we bring in there. Everything else is pretty, we've got some a little bit higher in 6198. We've got some cloud work going on in that. It's allocated out of storm. We've got, there could be some fencing, some stuff that we're doing there also in the line item for repairs. But pretty much the grounds have gone down a little bit in there because that's where our open space program, you can look at 6313. That's where we run our open space program that we've staffed up for last year. And then our operating supplies has gone down some because we do not pay for sweeping debris anymore or any of our garbage back here that we provide. Pride provides that part of the franchise now. And then you'll have 50,000 in infrastructure this year is for a project.
You could talk.
It's for a stormwater project that we have going on. So there's going to be some carryover for a project that we're finishing up in July. Anybody have any questions on that? What's that?
Well, I had a beer earlier, and now I had this drink, and I realized I haven't eaten shit all day. I had like an egg scramble this morning.
We need to have everybody mute their mics.
Hey, Dad, mute your mics.
Hope you enjoyed that beer.
Is there an administrator that can mute all the mics?
Probably probably Brad, since he set the meeting up.
Hey, Craig, just out of curiosity, what are air cards?
Air cards are for the field to be able to use laptops in the field.
Oh, okay.
So they can read maps, that kind of stuff, while they're working.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other question on the storm budget? Again, it will provide the same service that we provided this last year with this budget. We'll meet CWS requirements.
Craig?
Yeah.
What line item was the one that you said Pride was taking over?
So if you look in 6498, we had 79,000 budgeted last year, and we have 48,500. So our street sweeping debris that we haul off from the streets comes out of that. And we don't have that cost anymore, as well as garbage.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on then to Sherwood Broadband, and thank you, Craig. Brad, you're up.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Great.
Yes.
So this is the Sherwood Broadband budget that quite a bit of change this year. Some of you guys know that we added a construction crew that was run out of our Public Works department and is allowing us to do a lot of the construction ourselves at a little bit lower cost, actually quite a bit lower cost. And that's why you see a lot of the increase in expenses this year. On the revenue side, we projected, I think, a conservative amount of new growth. I think we're already proving, even as of this past week, that there's more revenue that's coming that we've received up until this point, or between the time I created the budget and between the time now. So feel pretty confident on these revenue numbers. What we did this year was break the revenue into two separate categories, recurring revenue and one-time revenue. And that runtime revenue is if we do a project where it's funded by a portion of the customer pays for a portion of that project. They're paying us a one-time fee to do this project. That shows up in that 4380 line. The top line, 4371, is actual monthly revenue or annual revenue that comes from customers. You'll see personal services took a big increase this past year. We added 2 public works workers and another network engineer this past year. Network engineer is back up to our primary network engineer. He's doing a lot of the customer service work, service turn-ups, and dealing more directly with the customers. I'm trying to think if there's any other highlights here. So while our expenses are higher than our revenue, I think it's important to know there's quite a bit of expense in here that will be directly tied to new revenue. So if we don't get one new customer that comes next year, which won't happen, but if it did, a lot of those expense lines will go down quite a bit. We also have about $40,000 in there for a marketing plan to be created. That marketing plan also includes marketing work that will be done. So one would hope that $40,000 will net new customers as well. I also put a blanket $100,000 in there for infrastructure. That should be used for new customer builds, thereby generating new recurring revenue. So, and then beyond that, there's just miscellaneous equipment that we need for the crew to run. This is our first year. This being our first year, we're going to learn a lot as our crews get out there and work, and we'll know how much, expense and how much maintenance the equipment needs. So this is kind of a first blush at what it's going to take. It looks like these are good estimates, but as we do this year over year, it's going to get refined. So with that, I guess I'll answer any questions that you guys have.
This is Tim. Go ahead, Kim.
Oh, no problem. Hey, Brad, I just had a question on line item 6801. What's a huge increase in the administrative reimbursement?
That is the byproduct, I believe, of having more staff in Sherwood Broadband.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks.
Is that correct, David?
Yeah, you are correct. It's just that you know now that program's kind of growing so much and taking off. Yeah, so more costs are being allocated because now these certain general fund departments there's now more services being offered now to broadband. But this is one area though I would like to revamp in terms of this whole cost allocation methodology that I'd like to look at next fiscal year.
So, Brad, this is Tim. I would first of all just to comment. The revenue growth is great, and for those out in YouTube land watching this, just to be, Brad, you said this, but I just wanted to say it in different words and be really clear. The additional staff we're putting there, the investment we're putting there, is so we can roll this residential service out to our community and offer a different broadband solution for our community out there. But in addition to that, it should be noted that all that expenses is being offset by the revenue coming in this fund. Correct?
Correct. We are not proposing anything from the general fund or any other fund to pay for Sherwood broadband.
And that's important to note, because for someone who may not know fund accounting for government out there, it's very difficult for us to share dollars across these different funds. So we can have a general fund that we're really struggling in, and have other funds that are rich, but under state law we can't share the funds.
That is correct. Yeah. Go, Brad. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, excellent work.
Hey, Brad, this is Nancy Taylor. Did I hear you say that you're able to shift some employees, like from Craig's group, over to work on Sherwood broadband?
Yeah, and Craig can talk about this, but we promoted 2 people within the Public Works Department over to be dedicated broadband employees. We have our own construction equipment that they use to install new fiber optic lines.
Okay, so they're not shared, they're actually shifted to you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so Nancy, all the construction of Sherwood broadband, or the majority of it that we're doing, is all housed out of Public Works and reports to our utility supervisor. So any construction that's going on, we're involved with on that end of it. And those people were promoted, as Brad said, and then we backfilled their positions since they've been doing it for a while. And we're having problems getting applications sometimes to hire qualified people.
So,
okay, super.
Hey, Brad, can you briefly just talk about the cost differential and the savings for the city to do this versus going outside?
Yeah. When we would contract out work, if we wanted to do directional drilling, that's taking a piece of equipment and drilling a conduit underground to a business or to a resident. In town, our rates that we've been seeing around $30 a foot. Our actual rates from having our crews do it is still somewhat yet to be seen, but our very conservative estimates are closer to around $5 to $7 a foot by having our crews do it. Probably closer to $5, but once we get projects under our belt, and some of you guys are aware of the Baker and Bell projects, we're going to start capturing those metrics, and that will help kind of guide future decisions and knowing how efficient our crews are and how much we can do in a year, and that will play into the prices that we offer customers, when we know what it's really going to cost to construct to them.
And when it's time for crew number 3, 4, 5 to come on board.
There you go.
I don't think we've ever heard that from you, Keith.
Well, I introduce new topics every now and again, or ideas.
I feel like that number gets bigger every time we talk.
Like you just said, go, 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 Brad.
I think he said 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Right? Thank you. I muted my mic too fast.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Are we ready to move on to D, debt service fund?
Yes, we are. Okay, so if you turn to your budget book, ADA, if everyone can turn to that, I guess I could say this is exciting times for the city of Sherwood and its residents too, that we will be making our final payment on the GO bond this upcoming fiscal year to pay off the PD police station that we took out a tax levy on. So pretty straightforward. Basically, we're just paying the final debt service payment. There may be a little bit of an ending fund balance in that fund, which I'm trying to get the exact mechanism, but if it's anything like the URA, we're just going to have to turn whatever's left over back to Washington County for then distributed back out to the taxpayers for any over collection. But we want to make sure that we get the money collected to make that final debt service payment. Pretty straightforward. We have a principal payment of $265,000 and an interest payment of $5,300. Any questions for me on that on that fund, or also I mentioned it is an exciting time where, could always be thrown out there too that we could look at other options for funding city projects and so forth. So, any questions? If no questions, I'll move on to the Transient Lodging Tax Fund, and that's located on page 78A. So you might notice that there's a few things different in this fund. You'll notice that the proposed transient lodging tax has gone up significantly with anticipation of that new hotel being open. And you might ask yourself, so how did I come to these figures? Well, I would have projected us to end the year about at $5,800 from all the Airbnb and all those small rental properties that we have here in the city, but due to COVID, that number has just fallen flat. During the month of April, we received 0 in collections, which was expected. But there are some pretty nice reports out there that kind of shows, well, during the week of March a year ago, and just kind of looking at the occupancy rate, it averages around 61 to 67%, and trying to calculate an average rate here, they get some pretty good statistics. And so when it comes down to it, you look at an occupancy rate. I look at that hotel possibly generating, factoring in a little bit of COVID, maybe about $47,000, roughly about $47,000 in transient lodging tax for us here at the city. And I know there was talk, and I remember reading this in Pryor's Budget Committee meeting minutes, where why don't we use this money? Why do we have to sit on this fund balance? Well, 30% of that can be used for unrestricted purposes, while 70% of that is promoting tourism. So I suggest, and if the Budget Committee agrees, now this is totally based off revenue collections, that we move 30%, transfer that out to the general fund to help fund general operations. And I'm open for discussion on that or any questions on that, but that 30% is unrestricted for us to use.
So just a quick, because I know someone's wondering, June 16th is the soft target date, opening date for that hotel on Meineke.
David, thank you very much. I appreciate the review and then the question. I don't know what the rest of the committee and council feels, but I think there's a strategic conversation that has to happen about how we use the transient lodging tax.
Okay.
We have a lot of people in the community, like the chamber and various different groups that have, put their hands out for that as well. And I don't know what the rest of the folks feel like, but I think that's a bigger conversation we have to have at a later date.
Yep, another day.
Okay,
I think that was the conversation we had outside of Budget Committee as council, is that when we started getting more transient tax in, we would have a conversation on where to apportion those to and bring in some of our community partners to be part of that discussion.
Well, and I was part of that first meeting, and that's kind of, Joe, Keith, you can correct me, but that's kind of how we ended it. Was there wasn't anything to fund at that time, but that we would bring that group back together to discuss it. So that's my remembrance there. So
yeah, thank you.
Agreed. David, I think that was before you had joined the city, so you may not have been aware of that.
It was before, yeah.
No, wasn't aware of that. So is that something that the committee is recommending, then take out that transfer to the general fund, just make that little tweak and adjustment to keep all the money in the TLT fund, Transient Lodging Tax Fund?
I think we haven't been transferring any out in the past, have we?
No, we haven't.
We didn't really have much to transfer.
Right. So I think that was what my understanding was. We were just going to leave it all in there until we had a conversation of what to do with it.
Yep. Oh, okay.
Where's the money going for promoting tourism? Does that go to the chamber?
There's no expenditures that have been budgeted in that fund since it's really been opened up. So, yeah. So there's no the money's just been accumulating in that fund.
That's Paul. That's what we were talking about, was having another work session with some of our community partners to see where those funds could be best served for tourism and whatnot, promoting our town. So it just hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll move to the grant fund. And I just notated those changes because I know at the very end we'll have to kind of walk through some of those changes that we've talked about. So the grant fund, pretty straightforward. The Community Enhancement Program Committee, they met during the month, at the beginning of March, right before COVID hit. And we received, I think it was around 15 applications just for various projects here in the city of Sherwood. They approved $92,000 to be issued out to organizations. I know something that might need to be considered is some of those events have been canceled. So, you know, do we still allocate that money out? Metro projected they were going to give us about $74,000. And so it's pretty straightforward. We get the money from Metro for this program, and we allocated out. The committee approved. Now the committee approved $92,000, but ultimately it comes to the budget committee, and they have to approve that allocation. Is there any question for me?
Just for clarification, even though we approved 92,000 and Metro's estimating 74, the reason for the difference is we had a balance forward, correct?
Yes, you did have a balance forward, and I have a projected balance even after this fiscal year. Let me just flip to the page. Still going to have roughly ending fund balance of about $24,000 to $25,000 at the end of next fiscal year.
If anyone on the committee wants to know where those funds were awarded, we can, David or Joe or somebody can send out that report tomorrow or next week.
Yeah, I could send it out. You know, if you guys have some deliberations, I could send it out actually here in a few minutes.
And for those that might be listening in YouTube land, these are monies that Metro gives us every year for the sole purpose of providing grants to community organizations. I think we're allowed a very, very tiny administrative fee, but this is what these monies are targeted for. They're not coming out of the city's general fund.
Yeah, more specifically, Metro taxes are garbage higher create this fund than just
yeah.
So, David.
I apologize, and that's just a great reminder. Metro does allow us to charge up to 28% administrative fee on the dollars collected or the budgeted expenditures. We felt that was a little too high, and so we're charging a small fee, just the amount of time it takes for my accounting supervisor, you know, collecting all this documents and putting in all this information together just to make the general fund whole.
So, David, I heard you say.
You might have just muted yourself.
Yeah, I did. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I believe when you were giving your debrief of grants, you mentioned the community enhancement grant and the possibility of doing something different than what we had planned because of COVID. When does that conversation happen?
It'd be right now. You know, up for discussion. Well, actually, Joe, maybe correct me if I'm wrong. Would we need to kick this back down to the committee?
Yeah, that's not a conversation with the committee. Someone's microphone's on. So we can revisit that with the Community Enhancement Committee, which is essentially the council, to see if there's any changes as a result of COVID. And we can schedule that as soon as potentially next week. So,
yeah, it's council and our Metro representative.
yeah, we could invite our Metro Councilor Dirksen. He's a member of the committee. It's probably good to have at least a revisit just to make sure you guys are all on the same page about the decisions you made pre-COVID.
And we need to get Councilor Dirksen out here before he leaves office.
Correct.
That's true.
So I have a quick question then. Let's say that the grant was going to go towards something that is no longer going to happen. What would you do with the money then? Do you give it back to Metro, or do you keep it in a fund for the next year?
No, it stays with us.
It stays with us. Metro allows in their intergovernmental agreement, which actually we received from Metro, so that'll be on the June 16th council meeting to approve the IGA. But they allow us to accrue that money if we wanted to up to 3 years without spending the dollar. It's built into the IGA agreement.
Okay, so you would grant it over the next 2 cycles then, or next 2 years, is that correct?
Yep, or just however the committee wants to divvy that money out. But yeah, it could be held for 3 years, or it could be divvied out next year or the year after, or split between the years. So there's a lot of flexibility with the committee.
And some of the money that we awarded just because the event or something didn't take place this current year because of COVID could probably still be using the funds. Like somebody was planning on microphones, or somebody was planning on paying their storage for, things like that. So we just need to review the list again.
Correct. I don't think it's a lengthy conversation, quite honestly. I think there's a couple grantees that we probably should talk about that are more events that were funded that have now been canceled, and just do that check-in with the committee.
And I just sent you kind of a listing of all the grant awardees. Just if the committee wants to review it and they have questions after tonight's meeting, they can always just shoot me an email or give me a phone call.
Okay, so we're at the end of the discussions, right, for new business. So
correct.
So now I have the next item as approving the city's budget, but don't we need to talk about it first, about the budget in general? Or
that's your next.
We had no discussion last time, so I'm going to open up to discussion. We do have a few extra pages. I know I sent in a lot of questions, and Councilor Young, and we looked at the what ifs, and I don't know if you want to talk about those right now. Mine were on page 11. I asked some questions about PERS. I'm sure if you had time, you read them. Councilor Young had asked some questions. And let's see.
Yeah, good questions. Interesting. The 5-year forecast still look with your questions bad. Shows why the economic development efforts that we're under need to continue to be strong, hopefully, after we get past this pandemic.
Right, but none of the projections we were looking at, I mean, we might be okay this year, we might be okay next year, but when you look at a 5-year projection, we're in trouble in 5 years, unless something happens to bring in added revenue, and a lot of added revenue.
You're exactly right. And the way I think about it, this is Tim Rosner. Every dollar we save today is $5 we're saving at the end of that 5-year period. So, the lesson is that the sooner we start, that we're lessening the impacts down the road. And, if you save $100,000 this year, in 5 years, you could be cutting 5 people if you don't do that. So it's important that we get ahead of this.
Well, and as I was looking at it and I got the answers back to the questions I had asked, one of the things I noted was that we're right now looking at adding positions, and I didn't touch the broadband because I know broadband is an area that could potentially bring in a lot of revenue. But we look at over the next 2 budget cycles, bringing on 4 people in the police department, and my question is, who are we going to lay off down the road? Because we're bringing on so many people, and we really don't have, we don't have that marijuana revenue, which I don't think 69,000 would affect much. But we have to look at what can we do to bring in ways of paying for this if these are truly things we want to do. And David, I know you have some ideas about how we could potentially fund projects to bring in extra bodies in the police department. Do you want to talk about those?
Well, I know I mentioned just briefly when we discussed the debt service, it might be a perfect opportunity. I was quite surprised to see all basically the tax measures that passed just the other week, whether it was Metro, City of Tiger, they're adding 8 officers, and it's something for ideas to be floated around since we're not going to have that GO bond right now. And to maybe not take such a big hit, there's always, you could always do a police levy. One thing I'm really looking at next year is really revamping this cost allocation, because I feel like the general fund is really, it's kind of like the black hole. It's the capture, the end all be all. It's just, whatever expenditure doesn't kind of fit quite perfectly with the program, it just gets dumped in the, non-departmental general fund, and kind of it is that black hole. And by revamping and maybe working on our fund structure, we can look at pulling out some departments, possibly creating new funds. Let's try to tighten and modify this cost allocation to keep more dollars in that general fund, so that general fund is not really that black hole. Those are some of the 2 biggest things I've seen, and I see a lot of opportunity, especially because it's not up to me whether the city goes out for tax levy. Of course, that's council, but it's really that cost allocation plan.
Yeah.
So Nancy, are you? Just a question. Are you asking what we can do in future years in that curve, or are you looking for a solution to help with the budget today? Because like a tax levy, as David brought up, we'd have to go through the whole process of selling that to the community, going through the polling, making sure it's going to work. And by the time we actually get those revenues, it could be a couple years out. And you're also banking on the fact that the community signs up for it as well.
If you go to the pages, the 5-year projections that I asked for, I asked to look at what the 5-year projection would look like if instead of we put off hiring someone this year for the police department, put off hiring 2 people, and instead of hiring 2 people next year, we hire 1 over the next 4 years past that. And we still came out, if you look at the 5-year projection, we still came out in horrible shape.
I appreciate your comments, Nancy. I'm a big fan of the efforts that we're kind of underway right now, which is grow to meet our needs, grow with economic development and smart development, and grow Sherwood Broadband to generate more revenue for our community first. We don't know. It's a thing to think about in 6 months, a year, or something like that, maybe. But I'm not. It's like my 5th choice on the list of ideas for generating revenue.
I kind of like I'd kind of like to hear where are the achievements that the new economic development director has done over this past year.
So Julia, do you want to talk a little bit about the amazing work that Bruce has been doing?
Sure. So first of all, it hasn't been a full year. We did not get Bruce on board until early September. And it's a little hard to quantify because of the way development, takes time. But so it's a little anecdotal, but he has really made an impact in the metro region, connecting with brokers, lenders, realtors, developers, bringing people to look at Sherwood that would have never looked at Sherwood before. I believe he has submitted project proposals for, I believe, 6 regional asks when Greater Portland Inc., which is sort of the regional economic development agency, and Business Oregon get prospective projects. They ask for proposals from jurisdictions on kind of who can accommodate this. And in the past, many years, we really haven't submitted much of anything. And he's submitted, I believe, 5 or 6 this year. He has solidly landed. Trammell Crow was already looking at the Tonkin employment area, but he really clinched them. He has brought very, very serious developers to at least 2 other properties within the Tonkin employment area. And he's just doing amazing things in the Tonkin employment area, not to mention all the amazing work that he's done since COVID hit. He and Corey, the chamber director, have really worked hand in hand to help businesses navigate everything that's available, coordinating weekly call-ins and bringing people like State Representative Neuron and Senator Thatcher, people from the Oregon Health Authority, to really answer questions for businesses. So it's a little hard to quantify, even from we've increased this many in taxes. We have been doing a quarterly economic development report. We've had 2 so far, and I don't have that information off the top of my head. So we're starting to track assessed value by different land use types, as well as tracking the number of jobs that have been created during that period. And of course, they can't necessarily all be attributed to him, but we're trying to track that so we can quantify that over time. So lots more. I could probably go on and on forever, but that is the tip of the iceberg on the types of things that position has done already, and really impressed us, but more importantly, impressed the region. I can't tell you how many people I encounter that have heard of Bruce, have met Bruce, and have indicated how amazing of a job he's doing, beyond even what is often seen by other economic development managers in the region.
And can I add to that, Julia? Because we talked a lot about bringing new business into town. But I know of cases where specifically he has turned around businesses that are already here in terms of the view of the city, and actually is holding their hand right now through investing in doing more investment in the city of Sherwood in terms of growing. And that's just huge.
Yeah. And connecting, I will go on, and connecting existing businesses with resources that they didn't know existed. He's making connections for them with people at the state, again, lenders. People are looking for expansion, and he's helping make the connections for them. Training, helping to facilitate even partnerships with the high school to help existing businesses in Sherwood that might need internships or might need training programs and that kind of stuff. So it's amazing that one person has been able to do all that he's been able to do in the less than 12 months that he's been here.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna.
Let me ask a question real quick, please. He's not a permanent. That's not permanent job status yet. Is that correct?
So he, last year in the budget, we had identified it as sort of a limited duration for 2 years, and that was funded out of the one time. In this year's budget, it is proposed to be moved from the one time to the ongoing costs.
I thought we had talked about that maybe last week. I just wanted to remind myself, Bruce is a fantastic individual, and he's a long play, good for the city. I'm glad he's in the budget for.
So thank you, Julia. I want to chime in just briefly about the value I have seen from where I sit. We would never be able to have responded to the COVID crisis with our business community without Bruce, quite honestly. I couldn't imagine not having that resource. And we are now, as Julia said, we are a player again in economic development. And the council has been very, very clear that that is their number one priority. And they, I think rightfully so, said, look, if that's our number one priority and we don't have a person doing that, we're not putting our money where our mouth is. And they also said to me, go out and find someone that has experience. Don't bring someone in that this is the training ground. So I think we hit a home run in many, many ways with Bruce because he brings decades of experience and he knows what he's doing. He's just learning Oregon. The things that he's working on don't pay dividends in 6 months. He's got some short-term wins, but some of the things he's working on are going to pay long-term dividends for this community for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And economic development takes time, but you have to be in the mix. And we were not in the mix for years. And I think this council said that we need to fix that. So that's why supporting the position and including it in the 5-year forecast is so important, because this is not going to happen in 6 months or a year. It's going to be consistent effort on his part. So, and I'll leave it at that.
And it really, thank you, Joe. And just to bring this full circle, why this is really important from a general fund point of view is we are 85% residential now, and it actually, if you do the math, it costs the city more to support on a dollar for dollar basis. For every dollar you bring in residential, you're going to spend $1.15 to $1.25 to service it. Commercial and industrial, it goes down to like 75 cents or 50 cents. So getting that balance, getting more economic development and that balanced tax base actually helps us with our general fund. That was also for the people out there in YouTube land. I know I'm talking to them a lot tonight.
Hey, Nancy, this is Sean. I just wanted to clarify one point that you had made earlier, just talking about additional revenue sources. And you had mentioned what David had mentioned earlier, the $69,000 in shared state revenue taxes. That's just the shared state portion that we would be receiving if the ban is repealed. As many people know, there's an initiative ballot that's looking to be gathering signatures to potentially get onto the November ballot. So according to Josh, if that does get overturned based on the voters in November, should it get on the ballot, we may potentially start seeing some of those revenues in the first quarter of 2021. So that would be a small portion, but that also doesn't include the potential. We had a work session last July, I think, where based on estimates from surrounding cities that do not ban sales, Joe had estimated, working with Katie, our previous finance director, $100,000 to $125,000 a year potential sales tax. So that could also potentially be a source of revenue should the ban be lifted, and that would help with some of those police officer costs. So I just wanted to clarify that $69,000 number.
I have a question. That sure would be nice to let the population know.
I had a question for David or Joe. Has the city ever considered going out for a PERS bond to offset some of the city's ongoing rising PERS costs?
I'll let David respond. The simple answer is no. I don't know what a PERS bond would be. And without polling, quite honestly. I don't know if the voters in any community in Oregon would vote to pay more money for PERS.
So that would be like the citizens paying for the employees' retirement benefits?
I don't know that it's actually one that you have to go out for like citizen vote for, but I know it's like a type of like bond out there that like I know school districts have it, and I'm pretty sure I've seen it before in cities, but it's like a general obligation bond that's specifically for PERS to offset the cost of that.
Yeah, it's a go bond where you take your unfunded liability and you pay it off, and then you're on a fixed note, and then they're growing that. It is not easy and hard to. I mean, right? It's not easy because it's part of what you're able to, your indebted base of what you can do as a city, and it's not a small amount, and it can prevent you from doing other things. That's important for a growing town. We maximized our general obligation bond debt 10, 15 years ago when it was all circled around all this utility infrastructure we had to do with water lines, reservoirs, the whole water transmission and treatment system and other infrastructure. So you don't walk down that path lightly, but some folks have done it.
And the reason I am not really familiar is I don't see a lot of my peers in other cities going that route. And if it was an option, I think we'd hear more from other cities that, hey, here's their PERS solution.
Yeah, they were more common back in like 2004, 2005. And I know there have been a few more recently, but sometimes it doesn't work out in your favor to do a PERS bond just for other reasons. I just didn't know if it was something the city had looked at and decided not to do.
I remember the conversation a long time ago, and it was because of being a rapidly growing community and a lot of other debt obligations that we needed to do. It was going to put a big limiter on us on what we could do.
Thank you.
It's a good question.
Well, what about a discussion around a bond like the one Tiger just passed to add police officers rather than the way we're looking at just funding it from the general fund? Is there a discussion? Do people want to talk about that?
I think what you're asking is, do we bet on a bond passing in whatever time frame it takes to get to that, and the time frame it takes to get the money versus taking some action today? I think a conversation of alternative revenue sources is important, and we have to have that going forward as a city. I'm worried about committing to that path today, because if we don't get it, then we're in a deeper hole.
Well, we're also talking about adding 2 more policemen next year, the year after this budget. So that would be something we should look at now for, consideration of that, since it takes a while to get on the ballot and put it together.
Personally, I struggle with the whole concept of a local option levy to pay for core services. I struggle. I am a much bigger proponent of growing wisely in ways of boosting revenue and other approaches. And we're doing that with this budget, with how it's structured. And I think it's the right approach, and we can revisit it in 6 months, 12 months to see how it's progressing. We don't know what the future will be like. That's why it's important to check in every quarter, even once we adopt or recommend a budget to council.
Yeah, this is Doug, Councilor Scott. I'd like to echo the mayor's comments. To me, public safety is the #1 priority of a city. And we should be funding public safety out of our general fund, not through subsidized additional funding measures. So if we can't fund what we need out of our general fund, in my opinion, we're doing something wrong.
I really think I'm incredibly proud of the work that we have all done the last 2 years in setting us up with revenue growth paths with property taxes and smart growth of property taxes, services like Sherwood Broadband, not just within our community, but external of our community. And then the wise advocacy from Doug and Kim to make sure we're doing smart things with public safety, with our intersections and traffic. And the net effect is we're going to have another pretty healthy, and I believe it's, again, a 5-year stream of revenue for the bad actors on 99 traversing our boundaries.
So I think that there's still the looming letters that were submitted for tonight that I would like to at least go back and have some conversation about. I am appreciative of the fact that the people who wrote the letters not only shared their concerns, but also shared options for something different other than just the 6% PERS. And I'm directly referring to the letter from the sergeants. It says page 3 and 4. David, that the paragraph that's talking about the option of COLA increase and then the 5% fringe benefit. I don't know if I 100% understand all that, but what does that option do for us?
You know, I haven't ran that scenario here. I could run it. So an additional one-time 5% fringe benefit spread over the year. Then if it permits and COLA increase plus a one-time. Okay, so give me about.
Explain?
Oh, what was that?
Can you explain what that means? Can you explain what that means? A one-time 5% fringe benefit spread over the year. What does that mean?
My guess is, since this didn't come from me, is maybe like a 5% like fringe benefit or a COLA, an additional COLA increase besides the 2.6% that's built in. I don't know if it's spread out where maybe on July 1st, instead of just getting a 2.6, maybe you're getting a 4.6, and then throughout the year, maybe midway through, you're taking an additional increase to slowly build up to that 5% over the year, kind of to spread it out, not to say, hey, July 1st, we're just going to get an additional 5%, is what my guess is on that.
If for that to work, it would have to be, if it would work, and I wouldn't advocate for it, it would have to be a one-time bonus that year, so it's not ongoing, so you can get to the original goal. But I do want to point out that we're referring to this a lot as a cut, and it technically is. It's a shift in burden on that 6%. But when you look at the big picture, the employees are still going to get a COLA. They're still going to get their step increases. And that, what does that come out to, David? It's like 5-point-something%. So it's really going to be flat for most employees for a year, as opposed to them actually seeing a reduction in their paycheck. Did I get that right?
Can you run that by me again?
So that if they're still going to get a COLA, right?
Correct.
And they're still going to get their step increases. When you add all that together, it's probably what 5%. So really, from an overall paycheck point of view, for the affected employees, they're going to be flat, roughly, right? They're not taking a cut in terms. They're not going to see a reduced paycheck. Or am I doing the math wrong?
No. It's generally flat.
That's my understanding.
I would have, each individual has certain different tax rates, so that would be analyzed at an individual level, because that That 6% cut, you know, yeah, you have the 2.6. Okay, we're not talking cut. Okay, the shifting of the 6% minus the 2.6%, there's still that gap, and some folks, yeah, spread out through the years, throughout the year, whenever they get their step increase. So whether that's 2.5% or the 1.5%, so it's flat generally, yeah.
Yep, and just so, let me add some more clarity. The 2.6% COLA would be July 1st, and non-represented, everyone gets their evaluations around January 1st, so they get, if they're eligible for a step increase, it's January 1st, so 6 months into this fiscal year we're talking about, they would get a step increase. Most step increases are about 2.5%. If you're higher in the salary schedule, it's lower, it's about 1.5. This is not a cut to salary. This is a shift of who pays for PERS.
Technically, it's a shift of who pays for the 6% employee responsibility first.
Correct.
Yeah, because the city's already paying between 22 and 27% on top of that.
Correct.
I had a quick question on, or I guess a quick follow-up to, oh, this is Matt, by the way. It sounded to me like the proposal in at least one of the letters was just the idea, or like some machinations to try to spread the 6% or the imposition of the 6% over maybe 2 to 3 years, as opposed to just taking it all in 1 year. I didn't know if that was something we had thought about also. I guess that was my understanding of what people were talking about with the fringe benefit, just trying to spread out the impact of that shift over multiple years as opposed to just 1 year. And then my other question, kind of following up on that, is there a holistic plan for how these are going to roll out across the different employee groups, and what's going to happen if similar discussions either proceed with the unionized members or don't proceed with the unionized members? Do we have a plan for how this would be revisited? Sorry, a little bit rambling.
It's also in the reader's guide on page 7 that it'd be sunsetted over the next couple of years. Not just taken as 1 year effect.
No, that statement is because we have contracts. This proposed budget proposes starting with non-represented this year. We have contracts with our unions we have to go through. Those contract negotiations are led by council in terms of their direction. I would anticipate that we would try to get everybody treated the same way, which is certainly something you've heard in the letters. But that will take some time because we have to respect the collective bargaining process. And the question about doing this in phases, last year when this was on the table, we talked to PERS about, can you shift this over a 3-year period? Could you do 2% and then another 2% and another 2%? And PERS said, nope, we don't allow that. It's either the employer pays the full 6% or you shift that cost totally to the employees. So PERS is not very creative in my personal opinion of giving options for folks to start to shift this burden.
Joe, that's very helpful. I think that would be a very helpful thing to include as we message around some of those things. Just knowing that it's an all or nothing type of decision is a useful piece of information to consider.
Yeah, excellent point. It's also important, I think, for folks to just note if you got the email today or yesterday or whenever Joe sent it out on the potential damage to our PERS unfunded liability during this time. So we don't know what will happen in the future couple cycles. Hopefully, the doom and gloom that was in that report doesn't materialize to that extent, because that was an incredible doom and gloom. I want to be an optimist, but there'll definitely be some additional harm at a minimum. Hopefully, not to that extent. So again, I believe this is smart. We've not been shy about this idea that Joe came up last year. We've been talking openly and honestly with all of our wonderful employees. And this is the first step that I think is an important step. And I support Joe's concept.
Brian Fairbanks, I'd like to speak for a moment. As a committee member, citizen, I'd also just like to throw my support in as well behind this budget as it stands. I'm not directly affected by PERS, but I am directly affected by COVID, and conservative is my biggest thing going forward, and I want to see our city as well take into account the unknown. And it's not a fear, but I have long-term concerns, and we're just at the beginning of this. So I don't want to say people would say be lucky that they have jobs, but I think at this point, a flat going forward is solid for many of us who don't have jobs because of COVID. So I would support this budget as it stands. Thank you.
I guess I would feel better if I know, Joe, you explained that most of the employees are flat and wouldn't take a big hit. I guess what I'm struggling with is the fact that as a community, we came together and we're helping the businesses, which I think is what we should be doing. We came together and we're helping our residents with some of their utility bills and such, which I think is great. We should be doing that. But yet it takes our staff, our wonderful staff, to be able to get the job done. And I feel in the time where everybody's been hit really hard, yes, they have a job, that's wonderful, but who knows what the other circumstances are. And now we're saying, okay, we're going to take the 6%, or we're going to do the 6% differently, and some will take a hit. So is there any way, without having names attached to it, that we can see that they truly are flat and not taking a big gouge in their take home? Or is that an unrealistic question? I don't know.
That's something I want to be able to run like tonight, but it's something that I could run to show the scenario, but that would take a meeting next week also.
Yeah, I'm okay with another meeting. I'd like to see the scenarios.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say we probably need to poll this group and find out. David, would you poll the folks and ask them if they are willing to meet again next week, since you have the list of who's there?
Nancy, before we do that, could I just want to make a few comments myself on the overall budget? Yeah, so I'll echo what Brian said. I support this budget. I believe this is a time to be very conservative. I also echo Doug's comments about, public safety is our #1 mission. And we've talked a lot about this, and I think to put it in perspective too, we have cities around us that are furloughing people. City of Portland, laid off a significant amount of their staff. The school district is furloughing people right now. So a lot of agencies are having to take much more drastic measures. We're in a much better position because we're not reliant on transient lodging tax. Our employees do a wonderful job. They've done a great job, during this COVID epidemic. But I am very concerned about what these next couple of years look like. With the hits to the markets in the private equity world, which was where a lot of the PERS stuff is invested, there's a lot of risk out there that our liabilities could go way up and these PERS rates could go up even farther than they are right now once they re-regulate this stuff. So I think we have to be very careful, very cautious, very conservative until we have a better idea where things are going. And so my vote is we've got a good budget. I support this and would move forward on it.
So, Tim, are you saying that you wouldn't be willing to look at additional information that, I assume that was Tim I just heard talking, that what you're saying is you think we should vote on this budget tonight?
Well, I'm willing to leave that question open to the whole group. I'm just letting everybody know my opinion. I think we got a good budget and yeah, that's all.
And just for the record, I agree with what you're all saying. I will feel better seeing that information, knowing that it's the staff that is getting things done for our community. I want to make sure that I have all the information. That's all I'm asking.
So can I ask a question? Because I want to be very clear about what you're asking for. What information are you looking for that you don't have?
So what I heard you saying and David saying is that the change in the 6% PERS by having the employee pay that PERS, that their salary will still remain flat because of the COLA and step. I guess I want to see that. If that's not that I don't believe you, I want to see it. Because I still think that there's some that might not be flat because of where they're at, their steps.
How do you reach that conclusion, though, when there's a 6% shift in a cost that right now the city as the employer pays? I just want to understand it. I'm not trying to be defensive.
No, I don't take it as defensive, and Joe, I'm not even sure if I'm even asking the question.
Because I don't want my staff to spend a lot of time producing information that doesn't answer your question. And I'm very cognizant about privacy and specific employee information about what people's salaries are. If that's what you're looking for, I think that's going down a very, very
HIPAA.
So if I'm out of line in my request, then that's why I asked. If I'm out of line,
I'm going back. Here's the reality. Just for clarity, I'm affected by this. I'm actually affected the most by this because I'm the highest paid employer in this organization. So I want to see the numbers. I've told David, if the budget committee votes for this, I want to see what the impact's going to be for me so I can plan. What will my net pay be after the shift? I want to see that because 6% is a number. It's not reality. And we're going to do that for everybody if this budget gets adopted. We're going to do that. And that's what I'm hearing you ask for, which I don't know how to present that to you to show you if again, I go back to generally, I'm going to pay 6% of my salary to something I don't have to pay right now. So that's a cost to me, but I'm also getting I don't know what my COLA will be, or I know what my COLA is going to be on July 1st, 2.6%. So my salary's going up, so I'm getting more money. And then in January, if the council thinks I'm doing a decent job, they may raise my salary. I don't know what it is. So I'm going to get someplace between probably 5 and 6% of an increase. That's a wash somewhat. Now, it may be slightly different because of taxes and things like that, but it's largely a wash. And that's going to be everybody. So no one is going to, you use the word gouged. No one is going to get gouged. No one's going to be paying, no one would be different. So I don't understand the basis of the question.
Hey, Joe, I think some of it has to do with the letter that that this committee received from Adrian and Jenny. One of the things they say in here is that the the income to the family range would approximately be from 450 to 900 per month.
I don't know how they come up with those figures.
Yeah, I think those numbers probably are. David, is this anywhere close to? Will this affect people between 450 and 900 a month? Because this is in public record now. I'm going to quit talking.
What's that?
So I'm just going to throw out a really, really rough number. If somebody makes $100,000, then 6% is $6,000, which breaks down to $500 a month. That's your worst case. You know, that's a $100,000 salary. I don't know how many people make more or less than that, right? And then of course you're going to get some of that back in a COLA and or step increase. So it seems like you're talking somewhere between, if the worst case scenario is $600 on a $100,000 salary, you're talking about, you know, maybe a $200 or $300 a month. In a worst case scenario, if you only got back 3% in your COLA and step.
So Nancy, I know you asked me the question, you know, to be transparent, there's certain information in an employee's file that, yes, there's HIPAA laws there, but public salaries are public information. But it does kind of depend on people's situations, you know, tax rates and, you know, everything else they have going on. But for example, let's just use myself, for example. You know, I would have a COLA increase of 2.6 July 1st. And I don't think my next review is until March 31st. So it's just kind of timing differences.
Right, but since these numbers are going to be in the public record as assumption numbers, so that people are going to lose approximately between 450 and 900 a month. Am I hearing that this might not be a good number?
That is
Those are not.
That number's not right.
To lose 900, you'd have to be making $150,000 and get 0 step and 0 increase.
And I don't think anybody in the city makes that.
One person does.
Maybe Joe.
And I've done the back of the envelope for myself, and I'm thinking I'll probably be in about the $400 range a month in terms of its effect on me. But it's not going to be 900.
But your situation's unique because you're under contract. You don't have increases.
Yeah.
Well, while his situation is unique, I think we still need to be aware of how it's going to affect
absolutely.
our staff. So while it's going to be flat for the first year, then the second year we're looking at having even a bigger issue if we don't have the COLA and the step, right?
They'll still the second year they get their COLA and the step, and then it's all added. It's all
Ahead of the game.
So they've been averaging, employees in general, you know, between a step and a COLA have been getting a total of, over the course of a year, 5 to 7% total. For 1 year, it'll be flat, give or take, that this would affect. And then next year, it would be, again, depending upon the economy in the future, you don't know, but the step plus whatever the COLA is.
So in a sense, it's like a salary freeze for a year. And then next year it goes back to, they get their steps, they get their COLA, their paychecks go back up.
Our state's at 20% unemployment. The state budget's shrinking by 18%. Cities across Oregon are in dire straits. I think this is a great budget.
So I guess I would go back to Councilor Browse. You asked the question. I would like to hear if other committee members want that, because that's a lot of work for David to do and his staff within a week.
I don't need it. I can do the math.
I don't need it.
I don't need it.
But I will say, just to be fair, we keep using the word flat, and there won't be a single person that's flat. They're going to take at least a 1% decline.
That would be correct.
And then in year two, I can't imagine anybody wouldn't be bringing home more net equal for equal than they are now. They might be down slightly in year one, and then in year two, they'd be back ahead of where they are now.
Correct.
Right.
So I'm unsure. Do you folks want me to run the analysis?
I'm good.
Can we suggest that if anybody would like for you to run the analysis, that they speak up instead of having everybody say no? I mean, is that an okay thing to ask?
Sure.
And please don't be shy. If you really want it, ask for it. Okay, I'm going to assume that means no.
I think that's safe.
Okay. So, with that said, are there any other areas we need to discuss? We have to approve this and then move to the UA, right? We don't.
Correct.
Right?
And then and if we act this evening, Joe, do we need to say anything as part of that in advance, or because of the couple of points that were brought up in discussion today with the transit lodging tax not shifting and a Scribner error or two?
Yeah, if you vote on this tonight, which didn't know if you were going to do that or not, David would have to help you with your motion on the amendments to cover all those minor changes. So you're voting on approving the budget with those minor modifications.
I'd be happy to make a motion if David could list those modifications for me. I'll quickly jot them down. Uh-oh, he's rubbing his head.
And we could also take a break and have.
I was going to suggest that, Joe.
Yeah, I was going to say, could we do a quick break? Could we meet back? David, do you want to send Kim maybe an email? And let's meet back at 8:15. Does that sound good?
10 minutes, all right, 11 minutes.
11 minutes.
That's
Use
good,
them
David?
wisely.
All right.
you want to
Keith?
say something?
Keith, we must live in the same apartment.
We are in parallel universes. I think that is for sure.
So I was going to entertain a motion. David, were you sending me information?
Well, I guess I misunderstood. Basically, I have the amounts. I could speak over the phone, or would you like me to send you the motion real quick if you folks just want to give me a minute?
So can I ask a really...
Oh,
David, is it the motion I have?
what was
I
that?
thought we had to have is it the motion I have in front of me? The
Well,
one I move.
there's a script I sent you, but there's a motion to approve the changes first before you can actually
right.
So
approve.
can I ask one last question?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm sorry. I want to sleep at night tonight. So of the different scenarios that the public comment letters throughout, is there, and David, I know some of this is not fair of me to ask you or put you on the spot, but is there any scenario that kind of makes sense or seems feasible that we should be looking at to help our staff this next year, or are you feeling like none of those scenarios really would help us?
I mean, the one thing is I know Kim, you asked for kicking it down the road 1 year, and you specifically asked 2 years. It just really depends. I mean, I got to be fully transparent, and none of these scenarios take into any consideration any new revenue, any COVID reimbursements, anything like that. This is status quo with the adding employees.
So it's not broadband. It's not any of the revenues that we can kind of.
We only.
It's just status quo.
We only do a 5-year projection on the general fund and not the other funds.
Okay. And everybody's comfortable with that.
Well, kicking it down the road 1 to 2 years just kicks the problem down the road the same years and just increases the problem.
And I just add that we essentially did that a year ago. I know this came up through the budget process last year, and I think everyone agreed that we wanted to give people time to prepare, and so we agreed a year ago to kick it down the road another year, and now here we are.
That's exactly correct.
And that's why I asked the question.
It was a good question. And no one muted you this time, Lana.
I felt like doing a little jig and song and dance, but I didn't want to put my video on.
So this is Councilor Griffin, and I've been kind of quiet this meeting, but I would like to just take a moment to speak my mind for just a second. So I thought a lot about the things that Tim has said and Renee has said and Kim has said, and no, honestly, how I feel is no matter how we're not spinning it, but no matter how we talk about this, the 6% changeover, no matter what, it's going to affect a segment of our employees in a certain way, and as a person who's worked for various organizations over the years of my life, I never liked it when my benefits or pay or anything was changed. I liked it to be the same or get better. I completely understand the feeling, the emotion of that. But at the same time, the other hat I feel like I'm wearing is a member of the Budget Committee and as an elected official for all everybody who lives in the city of Sherwood. My strong desire is to make sure that I'm doing right by them. I feel we have, as we had talked about in past goal setting sessions, we have this fiscal responsibility, And we have to look down the road. We have to look down the pipeline. So we have to figure out, what's the best plan. And right now, I think I agree with those that have spoken. I think it's a fair budget. I feel like our department managers are amazing. I think they do a great job, and they absolutely have looked at everything. And I don't feel there's any waste in there. And I know there was some talk about in the letters about, well, we have this surplus. Well, we do now, but if you look at that 5-year forecast, that is not always how that's going to be. And so I feel like I don't want to be short-sighted. I feel like I want to look down the road. What could we do? What would be, what across all of the citizens in the city? I just feel like I have to represent all of them. So that's my 2 cents. So I voiced this. I mean, if we extend another week, I'm totally fine with that. If people want to run projections or ask more questions, but like the mayor, I feel confident in the budget as presented with the changes. That's it. Thank you.
So, David, if you have the numbers ready, would you state the changes we need to do to the proposed budget, and then I'd make a motion to amend the proposed budget with those changes you state? The Scribner's error and shifting the transient lodging tax, leaving all the transient lodging tax revenue and the transient lodging tax fund until we have the conversation about what to do with those dollars?
Yeah, so the changes, so sorry, I thought I was on mute for a second. So the changes we noted, page 78, currently budgeted to transfer out of $18,941 to the general fund. We are no longer going to have that money transferring out, which that also changes the general fund transfer in by $18,941. Then also in the water fund, that is located on page 86B, water purchases. We're increasing that to $1,567,511. So in totality for the water fund, that's increasing the facility and equipment, thus reducing reserve for future years, just bringing that down by that difference, by the $197,000 difference.
I move to amend the proposed budget with those changes that David just stated.
I'll second that. That was Sean. I don't know. I think I beat Tim to the puncher.
Are we going to vote on that?
So, Nancy, do you want to ask for any questions on the motion and then ask for the vote?
Nancy?
She got disconnected.
Lana?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on mute, guys. So, okay. So we have a motion. We have a second to the motion. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Please say opposed. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, so I move to approve. David, can I go ahead and do this next part?
Yep.
Okay, I move to approve the proposed 2021 City of Sherwood budget, including the prior approved motion to amend. I also move that the Sherwood Budget Committee approve taxes for the 2021 fiscal year of $3.2975 per 1,000 of assessed value for the operating proposes, and let me move my cursor, and 383,815 for bond debt levy.
Second.
Do I have okay, have a second. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Okay, this passed unanimously. Okay, now do we move to the URA?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, we do want to do this tonight, right, guys? We'll go ahead and run it out, but we will stay.
Get it done.
Yes.
Okay, get it done.
They're
All
done.
right. David,
Yes.
are you going to present the URA budget?
No, Joe presents his budget message. We still have to go through the whole normal process. I have to do roll call and technically do all that since this is a total separate legal entity.
Okay.
So you can find the
Here we go.
agenda, which is what I'm
Oh,
doing.
I'm gonna. Yeah. Do I need to say now open the meeting of the 2020-21 budget for the URA for Sherwood
Correct.
URA?
Yep.
Okay. I'm opening it. David, would you do the roll call?
Yes, Mayor Mays,
Here.
Council President Rosner,
Here.
Councilor Browse,
Here.
Councilor Garland,
Here.
Councilor Griffin,
Here.
Councilor Scott,
Here.
Councilor Young,
Here.
Chair Nancy Taylor. I know you're here.
Here.
State for the record. Brian Fairbanks,
Here.
Matt Kaufman,
Here.
Paul Mayer,
Here.
Lena Painter,
Here.
Thomas Sherwood,
Here.
Katie Strode.
Here.
And I know there's been no citizen comments made to me in regards to the City of Sherwood URA budget. And so with that, I can turn it over to Joe for his budget message.
Yes,
Great.
so we're in the back portion of your folder. In the URA tab. This should go pretty quickly. So my budget message as the URA director begins on page 1 and continues on to page 2. I think most of you know we're on a slope to close out our existing urban renewal agency in the next few years. This budget essentially pays for debt service and some additional expenses, a portion of my time, a portion of Julia Hyduke's time, and then a portion of Bruce Coleman's time, because they do work on properties that are within the urban renewal agency. It's a fairly straightforward budget. I would probably just want to answer any questions you might have. There are no programs like we used to do. I actually got a request from a business in Old Town the other day about a facade grant and whether we do that. And I explained to them that we no longer do the facade grant program because the urban renewal district is closing down and we don't have the resources to run those type of programs any longer. That essentially we are paying for debt service so we can close the district out. So I guess I would open up to any questions the committee might have about the URA budget.
Joe, I have a question.
Sure.
I believe the old school property was up for sale last year. Did that sell or did we just pull it off the market?
It wasn't really for sale. We put up an RFP process to look for proposals, and we received a couple proposals from folks that were interested in purchasing that property. We have been working with one. We're still early in negotiations in terms of the development of the site. I think the COVID situation has slowed that trade down a little bit, but we're still working with that interested party, and that could lead to the sale of the property.
Can you tell us what it might be?
It would be a mixed-use type project, some housing and some commercial and office.
Okay, thank you.
Other URA budget questions that we can answer? David, am I missing anything from your end as the finance director on this?
No, just something to note. We're slowly drawing down. I was just going to pull it up for folks here. Just give me 1 second here. You know, we're slowly drawing down the amount we're levying for fiscal year 21. We're looking at a target levy amount of little over 166 million. You know, so as we slowly decrease that pushes more money into the general fund. And yeah, we're still on target to close this down by the end of fiscal year 23. Closing it down means we're probably gonna have to defease those final 2 debt issuances. What we're gonna be paying one more debt series off next December, but then 2 of them we're gonna have to defease. I'm still looking into that. And I know when Katie looked into that and analyzed it, she was talking about defeasing it. That means you just have collected enough tax revenue, you put it in a separate account, it's off your books. But it's generating enough interest revenue just to pay the debt service payment. Because I looked at, well, we have enough collected, could we just pay it straight off at the end of 2023? And one of the banks, they have a very complicated prepayment term that is based off market rates, and it's very complicated. And I tried to follow it, thinking, well, it would be a last minute decision because it depends on at the moment where the market is. So. But no matter what, we're still on target to close this thing out in fiscal year 23.
Is that the bank's long-winded way of saying we don't want you to pay it off early?
Yes, they want your interest.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, especially coming off the decision on the budget and looking at 5-year forecasts. In that 5-year forecast, there are revenues that will be increasing in the general fund in that 5-year forecast when the URA goes away. So that's an important factor, that if we were not shutting down this district, that 5-year forecast would look worse.
So that would be in year 4 and
insignificant.
That would be in year 4 and year 5 of that forecast for including the additional revenue.
And that revenue, if I remember right, Joe, it's already built in the forecast, but I think it's like $5,000 or $500,000 a year, if I remember right.
David, do you recall what that number was that you were using? It's probably 450 to 500,000.
I'm sorry, if folks cut out for a second. What's this in regards to?
So when the urban renewal district goes away in year 4 or 5 in your forecast, there'll be some additional revenue to the general fund. Can you tell us what that number is in your forecast?
Yeah, it's higher than just this in 2019. You were talking about $700,000, but you know now we're slowly drawing it down, so it's not like this huge windfall we're going to receive all in this 1 year, because we're slowly drawing it down and slowly adding money to the general fund. So yeah, it's about $500,000.
Other questions that we can help answer?
No, nice, straightforward. It'll be great when it's retired. A very successful district.
Yes.
Okay, so David, you got to help me out here. I don't know how. I move to approve the Sherwood Open Renewal Agency year 2021 proposed budget and tax rate. Can you tell me what the tax rate is?
Yeah, and tax levy amount.
Yes, could you fill that in for me?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, the tax assessed value was 166 million. I need to correct myself, but the levy amount is $2,947,368.
Okay, what he just said. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Do we have discussion on this? Seeing there is no discussion, all in favor, please say yes or
Aye.
Aye.
any dissension, any opposition? Same. Okay, it approved. Unanimous. So, I probably needed to do this at the end of the last meeting. I called the last meeting. I didn't actually say it was over, did I?
I think you just announced
Let's just assume I did. Let's just assume I did. So now I'm going to adjourn the URA meeting. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.